joining us, and I do thank you for the opportunity. It's nice to kind of show the fruits of the last 6 years of work. I know that a lot of you have seen parts of this, but I think that today we'll kind of give you a little more thorough tour and thorough explanation of what we're up to at NPDES Pro. I'm going to start out with a slide, a PowerPoint slide, just showing some kind of ideas and things that we've been at work doing, and some of the features we've incorporated into the new version 3 of NPDES Pro, and then take you on a tour of the application. Just by way of kind of explanation, we've got a lot of features and a lot of cool things coming out in version 3. I had hoped we would be there today. We are not quite there, so we are going to be kind of walking through where the application is today, and we have as a goal to have it ready for launch by the end of this month. So with that, let me jump into some PowerPoint information about our company. Let's see here. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. The slideshow says started in 2014 at the top. So the company was started in 2014, and we're based in Tacoma. I'm from Olympia and have lived for almost 25 years in Tacoma. NPDES Pro was originally part of a local stormwater service company, but we broke free, and it's now a 100% standalone company with no association whatsoever with the prior company. That has allowed us to really focus on the application and get it to a point where we feel it needs to be, and I think you'll see that that's where we're heading toward here with version 3. Let's talk a little bit about the history of NPDES Pro. As I said, we've been at it 6 years. We are right now in the 3rd complete rebuild of the application from the ground up, from every database table to every user interface, and that is what will culminate here at the end of August. We started wireframing this new application in August of last year, so we've been at this a year. And it's feels like a labor of love for a while, because you're just kind of designing things out, and it's been, like I say, 7 months of designing of new features and interfaces, and that's, as you'll see in a second, that's just in talking with users, in reviewing what the Washington State Department of Ecology is bringing about in the permit requirements, and kind of imagining how those could do, how we could include those best in our application. We started coding this new version in February of 2020, and we're still at it today. And you'll see some of those pieces here in a second. And like I say, we expect to deliver the application ready to go at the end of this month. We use the term MS4 management, and I wanted to take a second to explain what the difference between asset management and MS4 management is. And asset management, I know, is a term that we've all used, and it's typically the systems like, there's several good asset managers out there, asset management programs. There's CityWorks and Maximo and a few others that are widely used. But I think we've coined the term MS4 management. Maybe it's been in use, but in general, what's the difference? Asset management, and when I say asset management is structure-based, hopefully you're seeing that on my screen. What I mean is this: databases are constructed with a base level of data, a base table, a table from which everything else kind of emanates. And asset management, that base table is the structure. Maybe it's the manholes and the catch basins and those things you see as part of the stormwater system. And as a result of that, asset management systems are very good at recording maintenance records, work orders, those kinds of things. They're not so good for overall MS4 compliance reporting. And they're really, although there's some exceptions to this, they are really limited to the maintenance of public assets. And the difference, the MS4 management it includes all responsibilities of the MS4. We include strong mapping features, and you'll see that in a minute. It simplifies communication between all stormwater stakeholders, which is really one of the huge benefits of MS4 management programs. End of year reporting becomes a breeze because we've looked at the entire system from the very top instead of from the asset level. And right along with asset management, assets can be managed as part of an MS4 system, just along with the rest of the stormwater system and the stormwater requirements. So I want to talk a little bit about how version 3 is organized. As you know, the NPDES MS4 permitting guidelines include 6 control measures, which most or all of the inspection types and requirements and responsibilities fit underneath. So we've organized it using those 6 control measures, and those I've listed here: public education and outreach, public involvement, illicit discharge, construction site runoff, post-construction runoff, and good housekeeping. And I've asterisked those that are new in our version 3. We did not have those modules before. We did have IDDE, construction site runoff, and post-construction runoff. And in NPDES Pro, each control measure is a module, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Cynthia Hickey, I'm gonna step back. What is wireframing? So wireframing is the process of actually creating a kind of a non-working version of your application for communicating with those who are going to do the coding, right? So that you can show them what the system needs to look like and how it needs to perform. It's just kind of like creating a blueprint, creating plans for what you want to do with the application. And that's how we got started back in August of last year. Here's the roadmap that we have been using for version 3, and this should be familiar to most of you. And what we've been doing is kind of looking at the permit requirements as they come out and saying, okay, how do we make NPDES Pro conform to the Washington State Department of Ecology requirements, and how can we include features in it that will make your job a lot easier. And so I won't go through each of the red line documents on the side. I know this is being recorded, so you could read them later on, but in general, we have gone through each of the requirements, spoken with ecology, spoken with users, and made sure that we are including or have the framework to include for later requirements, like the 2023-2024 requirements. We're including the features that are going to be required as we move forward throughout the process of conforming to the permit. I think I have one more page of this. So what are the features of NPDES Pro version 3? So the first is a graphic dashboard to track all 6 control measures plus water quality, which is a 7th dashboard. And some of these I'm working from some of the questions that were provided to me in advance of this webinar. Another feature, we have full onboard mapping integrated with Esri ArcGIS, and that is a new feature for version 3. We had mapping systems in the old application, but they weren't fully integrated, and I'll show you what that means in a second. You can create your own workflows that conform with your MS4's processes. In other words, NPDES Pro does not prescribe a workflow process to you. It allows you to say, hey, this is how we've done things, so let's get that as part of NPDES Pro, and then it can remind you as your thresholds and timelines come up what needs to happen, compliance expirations and those kinds of things. Use your MS4's terminology inside of NPDES Pro, and what that means is, the control measures call each inspection type a specific name. But your MS4 probably uses a different name, and one example is one MS4 may call an O&M inspection, they may call it a PDI, private drainage inspections. Another may call it a facilities inspection. NPDES Pro allows you to use that nomenclature inside it, and once you've told it what you use for that terminology, it uses it throughout the application. You can create user types that conform with your municipal processes. So Instead of the old application had two user type levels, administrator and inspector. In the new version, you go in and create whatever user types you want, give them the permissions that are, kind of customized to that person's needs, and give that user type a name, and then you can create kind of custom user levels for each different user type in your MS4. And we can integrate NPDES Pro with other information sources. We've built in a fully functional API, and that term is Application Program Interface, which just means that NPDES Pro can talk with other applications. Esri is certainly one of them. Databases that have your communication and addresses and emails and phone numbers for site owners and the like as another example, and I'll show you that in a second. Let's take a look at some of the information about the graphic dashboard. You can see status of the MS4 instantly, right? And we'll take a look at the actual dashboard in a second. Track your compliance against requirements. For instance, are you hitting 20% of your source control sites and 100% of your complaint sites in a given year? Water quality dashboard showing improvement of water quality over time, which is kind of my seventh dashboard, or what I like to call the so what dashboard, which shows actual improvements in your water quality based on inspections, out of compliance, in compliance inspections, and the like. And then you can print compliance reports for municipal or state level reporting. And what municipal reporting means is if you have to report to your council or other agencies within the area that say, hey, how are you doing on this? We have a full system to actually outload PDF reports and have something quick to hand out. Just a quick snapshot of our dashboard as it's being developed, and I'll actually go into the application in a second and show you a little bit more detail there. Onboard mapping, full onboard mapping functionality, which means you can actually create stormwater systems in the application. That application will, or that stormwater system map rather, will inform your Esri account. And then you can actually bring in your full MS4 map inside of NPDES Pro. And then those maps become a basis for your inspections. And a little screenshot of my neighborhood and that map system, and we'll take a look at that in a second. Custom workflows, right? Conform NPDES Pro process to your MS4's historical processes. Send emails and letters based on your MS4 requirements. In other words, you say, I want a letter to go out when this happens, and that's when it goes out, instead of the system prescribing to you when it'll go out. And then change processes as necessary based on compliance and responses. So if your process changes, then you can change NPDES Pro to meet that process. And kind of a little window here showing, how you'd set up. This is what our this is how we're going to set up a threshold and an inspection process, and kind of the variables that go into defining that. Custom terminology. Conform all the NPDES Pro terminology to your MS4. In other words, post-construction inspections of storm drainage structures, it gives you a little description of what it is, and you need to and you're going to refer to this system, this program, as what? Right? Facilities, and you're going to say the inspection number is a PDI number. In other words, we program it to use your nomenclature. What that does is it cuts training time, because familiar terms are used. People know what they're looking for. And if your process changes, you just simply change your system. Custom user permissions. You want to define a business source control inspector or a CECL user or facilities inspector or what have you. You can define all of your user types yourself, and as we'll take a look here in a second in the full permission system. And let's see, integration. And the API allows sharing of databases, reducing redundancy. So in other words, if you've got a database somewhere that has contacts already, you don't need to, although NPDES Pro does have a full onboard contacts database, you don't have to use that if you've got another source for that. What that does for you is you can cut down the number of times that you have to update information. You can just update it in one source. contractor CECL inspections. It has a module that allows CECLs in your municipality to do their inspections and actually populate your form. So you're acquiring information that you're going to need from other sources and being able to see that. Mapping by system owners. Our mapping functionality is actually exportable to the users and system owners, property managers, site contacts to say, you go map your site. And when they do that, it actually populates your NPDES Pro account. So it helps with onboarding, helps when new sites develop, and you can get them to do the work and educate themselves on where their storm system is and exactly how it functions. And then uploaded photos and vendor receipts. That's a system that we've had in place in our current version, but it's enhanced quite a bit in the new one. I've used this slide before, NPDES Pro, custom, secure, cloud-based, and complete. And I think that even version 3 is a little more complete than the past version. And this is something I like to highlight. We provide one-on-one trading and custom data integration with each account. Again, I'm in Tacoma and love to get in the car and drive. And so when we get you on board, and assuming we can, depending on the COVID issues at the time, we come to your site. We do an actual on-site training. People get to know me and they leave with my phone number. They get to know our team and they leave with phone numbers for everyone. So it's not a kind of arm's length. You're out there in Washington and we're over here in some other state, and here's our website, and hope it goes well. We're right here and we help out. And if you call, we will pick up the phone and we will get answers to you. And I think that if you were to talk to existing users, you'd hear that that's one of our great strengths. And that is the end of the slideshow. So with that, I'm going to jump into a few pieces of the application. And what I'm going to do is drag this screen over. Are you seeing, maybe you let me know, Lori, are you seeing the NPDES Pro dashboard?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, so we're going to see some big pink under development bars, and occasionally when we click a box here, we may see some things that aren't quite functional yet. The application looks like it's still a ways out, but the interesting thing about database application development is that 80% of the work gets done kind of behind the scenes, and once that work's done, then the other things go really quickly. So things like bar graph here, email performance graph here, those are done very quickly now that kind of the basics are done in the background, and we'll take a look at some of those in a second. So the first thing I want to discuss is the dashboard. So one of the questions on the sheet that you provided me was, do we have a graphic dashboard that allows us to see kind of what's going on quickly? So remember I said that we use 6 control measures and we set the dashboard up that way. So again, if you were to rename these in the application, these names would change. But you can a user can come into the application and say, okay, how are we doing on public education? And the application actually allows you to create audiences and to focus educational material to those audiences. And when you do that, you get to see how those audiences are receiving that information. Are they opening it? Are they clicking it if there's something to click? And then kind of measure how that has been kind of received. And that's done through email performance graphs. As you send out information, you can again see how many sent, how many unsubscribes, how many were opened. Public participation is very similar. Public participation is the module where you say, hey, we're going to be at the Puyallup Fair, or we're going to be doing a stencil a drain program. And over the years, you can say, okay, we're going to have these events and we want to invite people to them. And that's where we actually connect a system to your social media accounts and your email system, and so that you can get invitations out. And then once the event has happened, we actually then record the event so that you have photos of it and information about attendance. Illicit discharge. Now this is a system that is in the current application, but we've enhanced it a bit for this version, and I'll actually probably go into our current version of NPDES Pro to walk through illicit discharge, because I know you have a lot of questions about that. But again, illicit discharge is kind of investigation or case-based, and allows you to map and kind of keep tabs on cases in a tab form. It can be based on site addresses, or it can be based on intersections, or it can be based on GPS locations, which the application can get from a device, from a tablet or from a phone, and I'll show you that in just a second. Construction site runoff, again, based on CECL applications. As I mentioned before, we have a module that actually your contractors that are doing projects inside of your MS4 can use to do their inspections, and those inspections then will populate your construction site, or your construction dashboard rather, and you can keep on top of how those CECL inspections are going, and then when you go and take a look at it, you have all of the prior report information without having to ask for it. Post-construction, we've gone through a little bit of that. That's O&M and source control, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Good housekeeping is kind of an interesting area, and this is an area where we intend to do a lot of work in the future. A lot of the functionality that's associated with an asset management program can and will be included in this good housekeeping module in the future. Currently, it's just mostly going to be used for maintaining contracts, managing contracts. If you've got third-party companies that do say Vector work or street sweeping and the like, but in the future we'll use this as a module to actually kind of act a little bit more like an asset management application. And then last is our water quality dashboard. This is kind of what we call I've been referring to as our so what dashboard, which is where we're going to post and show how are we doing? How many more inspections are compliant than last year? How many more outfall inspections are improved? So kind of how are we actually doing in this area? I'm going to go over to the sites and parcels page, because this is kind of where we start to see some of the map functionality of the application. For those that may have seen some of the older the older version, and maybe I did a demonstration for you. If you recall, and I'm going to just pop over there really fast. If you recall, our kind of color coding system for the status of a site was the entire bar was green in this case. We've actually broken that up so that you can categorize based on your inspection types, and then each of those inspection types for a given site are color coded separately, so you can instantly see how a site is doing. And you can see that either in your tabular version on the side, or on your map version on the right hand side. Now, very similar to our old site, we had a filter search area, but it actually pushed your screen down. In this case, we have a modal now that comes up that allows you to still continue to see the screen, and you can set filters on the site. And then our map functionality over here, if you click this, you can actually see the site and go to the site right here. I'm going to go to the Alder Ridge Homeowners Association in a second. So very similar to at least how the site was organized before. So this is our site page. Very similar to how it was organized before, but much cleaner than it used to be, and much more intuitive than it used to be. So the reformat has allowed us to kind of include parcel information here, compliance information here, and then upcoming and historical inspections here. And then down below, We've got our full mapping in this area. This is where we'll actually create our maps, although that functionality is just being added here in the next week. And then we have the tabs very similar to what we had before. Facilities showing us the facilities inspections, source control showing the source control inspections, construction, pollution control, which is a rename in this application for illicit discharge. Then we have grease interceptors and oil water separators. This is another area that we've really enhanced the functionality in the system. We had a lot of users that were saying the fog functionality is something that they needed more of, so we have improved that. And this is another system you can rename. If you call it fog, we call it grease interceptor here, but if you call it fog, we can change that. Oil water separators, again, we can record inspections, and you can have more than one grease interceptor and more than one oil water separator on a site. Site documents is a functionality that we've had in the old application where you can upload all the site documents for a given site, and those are available to send out with outgoing notices. And then communication is, I think, a huge upgrade in this new system. As you recall, we had outgoing system notices rather in the old version, but there was no kind of back and forth. All you knew is it was sent. In this situation, we know that if it was sent, we know if it was opened, right? And we know we don't have one here, but we even know if the links were clicked, and so we have kind of instant notice as to whether or not somebody has taken a look at what we have sent out. I want to bring up one other thing, and that is watershed flagged for, and then it just says pull in pollutant still to do. One of the features we've included in the application is that if you do outfall inspections, and if you notice an exceedance in your outfall, you can mark the outfall as having an exceedance for whatever pollutant it is. That outfall is connected to a watershed, and each of these sites is in a watershed. So if you mark the outfall for a pollutant, then what happens is it goes back and finds every site in that watershed and says, hey, the outfall that this watershed's connected to has an exceedance for this pollutant. And so be on the lookout, right? Maybe it's zinc, and maybe somebody has some galvanized steel kind of, in a spot where it can cause, get to the stormwater system. So it's the opportunity to kind of pull back and say, okay, we see that this problem is happening downstream. Let's come back upstream and see if we can't find its source. And I'll do one other thing, and that is click my schedule button over here. As you recall, if you saw the old version, in our old version, you had to schedule each inspection type from a different location. In the new version, you schedule everything from one modal that comes up when you click the schedule box, and your inspection types are here. And again, if you've renamed these, this would be an O&M inspection to some people or a PDI inspection to others, but in this case we call it facilities, so the system calls it facilities. And you can schedule everything from the modal right here. Let's see, jumping down to account settings, is there some neat features I included in here, or we included in the application here. So I'm going to go to control measures, and I've mentioned several times that we can rename everything, and so each of our control measures is here in the application. This is where we control two things, well, several things, but I'll highlight two things. How we refer to that system throughout the site. And so let's run down to post-construction site runoff. So we've been calling things facilities, and if we use a prefix, I've said FI for facilities inspection. Compliance, default compliance timeline, next inspection number, compliance year start and end. And then we set our goals. And these goals are just really, you can set however you'd like to have them, whatever numbers you'd like to achieve. But let's just say we know that source control inspections, let's pop down here, we know that source control inspections, by the permit, we need to achieve 20% inspection of our sites. So effectively, we need to inspect them all every 5 years. And we need to inspect 100% of complaint sites. So we can set our goals, and maybe we want to set exactly what the state asks us to do. Or maybe we actually want to increase that a little bit just so that we kind of are, maybe shooting for a higher number just in case something happens along the way. And so we set those numbers here, which this informs then our dashboards that shows us how we're doing through for each of our inspection our goals. Let's see, account settings, permissions. So I'm going to come over here to account settings again and go down to permissions. We talked a little bit about the ability to create whatever kind of user you'd like to create, and this is hugely valuable. I'll click on create user type. What you can do is, every city, I've found out throughout the 6 years we've been doing this, every city does things a little bit differently. And so what we've done is we've actually come back and said, hey, listen, let's put every functionality there is on our on the permissions site, and then you can kind of custom create a user type so that they just see particular things, and then you give that user type a name, and then when you come down and create a new NPDES Pro user, you give them that exact user type so that you've created that user type, and then they see only what you want them to see. Valuable if, for instance, you have somebody that puts in complaints on your from your pollution hotline, and all you want them to see is a complaint form. You kind of create maybe a pollution hotline user type, or create a source control or business inspection user type, so that everybody can kind of have their role in NPDES Pro. And I wanted to pop over, you had a lot of questions in illicit discharge, and so I am going to pop over and take a look at that. A lot of the functionality that's in our current version of NPDES Pro for illicit discharge, it was the last module we created in the application, and quite honestly, it kind of set the tone for how we were going to create the new version. And so this module is the most like our new version of any of the modules in our old version. I'm going to actually start at the bottom here with illicit discharge settings. Every variable in the illicit discharge module can be customized to be however your MS4 uses it. So for instance, the status setting of an illicit discharge condition, you can create these, change these options, add options, eliminate them, however you want to create them. You can do the same for evidence of a illicit discharge. What are those? Well, we can change any of these. We can add an option that says there is oil sheen on water surface. Save that, and now we have this last one is oil sheen on water surface. That now will show up in our illicit discharge forms. Same for reasons, causes, on down the line. And I'm going to just start an illicit discharge investigation, create one, and what happens is we have the ability to come in and say investigate, where is this illicit discharge happening? And we can do it at a site, at an address, at an intersection. In this case, I'm going to choose latitude, longitude. And assuming we're standing at that site with our smartphone, we would just click Get from Browser. It would ask us for permission to access our location, and then fills in our latitude and longitude. And then these, all customizable down below, are included. All of the checkboxes are included, and these again are the customizable. And then we can say, are we going to notify ecology of this? And if we do, in the new version, we have our full compressed XML discharge or export rather, and we use their schema, Washington State's schema, and so that will actually create an XML file that comes out of the system. I'll show you that in a second here. Comes out of our system, and so if I come down here to it's pollution control in this one, if we have an illicit discharge in here, we can have a compressed XML with an export button right here, and that will give us our file that we can then go and upload to Washington State Department of Ecology. Let's see, that's a lot awfully quickly, and I think we wanted to stop for questions, and so with that, Lori, I know there's a ton more in here to show, but I think that kind of gets the guts of it. I have a question, Kevin Brennan. Kevin, good to talk to you. Are most of the customizations able to be completed by the users? Absolutely. So all of this is an administration level account settings, and this would be your form, your page, right? And so all of the permission levels, creation of departments, all of the settings, everything can be done by you. You don't have to come back to us. You can if you got questions about it. Absolutely, we're always here. But you don't need to do that. We can take care of that. So I guess, Lori, I'd open it up for questions and see what kinds of questions people have. If that seems like the thing to do.
Yes, you can go ahead and do that. People can unmute themselves, but there is a question from James Packman in the chat box right now.
Right. Yeah. Ability to do batch reports for illicit discharge incidents, or export XML capability for just one incident at a time. No, it is absolutely for batch reports as well. And so in our illicit discharge reporting, we have full batch reports, and I won't click. I'll show you the kind of the reporting area here, but I know that there's nothing there right now. We're just working on that. Actually, that's kind of one of the goals for today, is to get the illicit discharge into the new version. But yes, absolutely, there'll be batch reporting. Cost information. So the way we do it, and it's probably better to talk to each MS4 individually, but cost information for the application is we do a one-time onboarding cost, and it just depends. That onboarding depends on what you have. We like if we can provide us CSV files formatted to our system, then we do a real, I think it was a $1,500 onboarding fee if you have those CSV files. What we have found, though, is a lot of times people will turn over. We've had access databases delivered to us. We've had account credentials for various asset management applications. We've had other things. And we'll talk to you at the outset and say, okay, if this is kind of how you would like to migrate from whatever you're using to NPDES Pro, then let's talk about how we can do that. And I'll give you a kind of a unique proposal. After that, it's an annual license, and we don't limit user numbers so long as they're municipal users. We can walk through kind of how we do that, but we have municipalities right now paying anywhere from $5 to I don't know, I guess $10,000 a month, or pardon me, a year, not a month, $5,000 to $10,000 a year, and it just depends on which modules you want and what functionality you want, and we base it on population size, because that is typically going to define how much memory you use and how many emails need to go out. So that's hopefully a good answer for your cost information question. Others? Regarding the flagging of pollutants present in a watershed, what's the source of that information? Just other inspections within the system, or does it pull TMDL listing or critical areas data? So what it actually is doing is there's illicit discharge module has a outfall inspection system in it, and I said I wasn't going to do this, but what I'm going to do is run over to our wireframe. Somebody asked me what a wireframe is. You're about to see. And I'll pop in and show you exactly what this is. So if we go to, let's see, if we go into the system, I'm going to go into illicit discharge, and I'm going to go into settings. So this is yet a third version of the application you're seeing, but this is literally the design we came up with to communicate to the web development team what we wanted, right? And so we have in the system, we actually have our outfalls, and then we can do an outfall inspection. And if we were to come in and create a new outfall inspection, we would see, okay, here's where we can show exactly what's going on, and if we have an exceedance, we can show it here. We don't. The form is part of the new version, and then that would actually allow us to tag an outfall and therefore a watershed, and then kind of get that information through to every site that's inside of that watershed. Hopefully that answers your question, James. Other questions?
If you have a question and you'd rather ask it instead of typing it into the chat box, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Jeff, this is Kevin Brennan, City of Tacoma.
Hey.
If an inspector were to complete an inspection on a property, whether it be a business or a device, is there an approval process or anything that could be built into an inspection process?
Yeah, absolutely. So the system has kind of a full application, full ability for you to say, what is my process, right? If I were going to, I want to schedule it, and I want to schedule, as a default, I want to schedule inspection 60 days out. And here's the letter I want to send with that. And then, or here's the form, right? The pre-existing form that we, in your case, the City of Tacoma have, we want to send with that. So then when I send that, it starts this clock, and then I want to do the inspection at this point. And if the inspection is not compliant, or if it turns up these things, I want to mark it as not compliant, and I want to send out another letter. Those kinds of things. So each of those is creatable at a as a kind of at a municipal level, at an MS4 level. I see another question kind of along the same lines, Kevin. So I'm going to jump into the letters over here. So now I've gone back into the kind of the old version. What we have in the old version is we have our outgoing mails and letters, emails and letters, and we have all of our notices here. And we can go in. Let's just say we want the needs cleaning attention letter. So this letter in our current version, it goes out when specific things that are prescribed to you in NPDES Pro happen, but you can change the text of the letter. In the new version, what happens is you still can change the text of the letter, but you can create new letters, create freeform new letters, and assign to them thresholds that when that happens, this is what I want. This is what will get sent out. And this is how these letters are created. You just hard code in your text, or cut and paste it from your MS4's current letters, and then include database variables into the letter, so that it will go back to the database and send out that and get that information. Let's see. So I'm just kind of going back over the questions here. Here we go. Can you show standard letters or other processes for communications with regulated parties? So this is kind of where we're headed with this, or where I'm headed with this response. But in our new application, these are actually tied to custom thresholds and custom triggers that we create for you in the application, and then you can actually create yourself as well. Is this Kelsey Grover, is this application compatible with an already existing GIS database? So the answer is yes. And if your existing GIS database is an Esri database, we have two levels of the application. We can use our mapping application that we've created in NPDES Pro, and that speaks back and forth with Esri. Or we can actually use your Esri account in the application itself. If it's not an Esri account, then what we can do, and I'll show you that in a second, what we can do is what we have is a tab that will bring in through URL your web-based GIS system, whatever it may be. This one happens to be ArcGIS, but we can bring in any web-based application. Now, if this is the way you need to go with it, if you're not using Esri, then the application comes in and you can interact with it, but the two are not speaking to one another. We can use our API to make it connect with your application. We would kind of talk to you about that on a one-on-one basis. But in general, the answer to your question is yes. And two, are all modules included, or can a municipality pick and choose which ones are needed? Yeah, you can pick and choose, and we talked through with you about that, and work kind of show you the modules, and you can figure out which ones you want. Let's see, micros. What's the time frame for the release of the proposed changes in functionality under development? Into this month. I had hoped that they would be here by this show, or by this demonstration. Unfortunately, we're not quite there. It's taken a little bit longer. I was actually chosen as one of the speakers for StormCon this year, and so I had on my list, we have to have it done by StormCon, because I was speaking on technology and the future of stormwater compliance. But with the COVID changes, I've had a little more time, and my web guys were quick to grab it and say, hey, listen, we'd like to take the additional time, because they really want to make the application kind of sit up and bark. James Packman, regarding compliance status, how is that determined within the software? Is there an in process or similar almost in compliance designation too? Yes, there is, by the way. And again, these are also free form, so you can say, here's a compliance status that I want to set. But when we load up the software with your MS4, we have some default levels that you can use, but we can change them as well. But kind of you've got cleaning, or in the case of an O&M inspection, you've got cleaning recommended, or is it required? And those are the kind of the beginning default ones, but we can then kind of nuance those as you see fit for your MS4. And then your second question, can the compliance determination be customized to refer to specific data fields? Yeah, absolutely. That's our our letter construction. So when you construct a letter, you come in and you say, okay, let's pull in these data fields and tell people, hey, listen, you didn't, here's what you did wrong, and it'll include deficiencies, those kinds of things. And this is a very general conversation about the application right now. I think that if you kind of, if from this, if you've got enough interest, it would be great to do a kind of a customized demonstration of the application for each one of you that's interested, and then I can show you exactly how some of these things work. Hopefully that answers your question, James. All right.
Well, we have 5 minutes left. If anyone else has any other questions for Jeff.
So I feel free to shout out the question if you want, but the application is we're Washington, you guys are Washington. We are kind of tracking the Washington State Department of Ecology requirements. As I've said to others, there will be a day when we turn our gaze on other states, but it's not yet, and we want to really get the application just spot on for Washington MS4, so that you guys have something that is really a great tool for you. And then when that day comes, then we'll look at expanding beyond that. But we've got a lot of work just to make that work. So, Mike Rose, what is the background data storage format? So the storage is it's MySQL based. Everything is encrypted. And everything's encrypted in transit, and then there's several fields that are encrypted in storage. The Amazon S3 storage service is what we use for the data. We have, I'm not sure if you're alluding to this, but we have a ton of security in the application. Port of Tacoma is one of our users, and because of DHS requirements, we've had to adapt the security to a pretty high level. Our new version is even higher. We have two-factor authentication, IP screening, and so I think you'll find that that's a pretty significant step up again in security. And we do have an option, if you'd like. We have an option to actually store the data on your local servers, but as kind of out of the box, it's stored on data farm servers. Hopefully that answers your question, Mike. Yes, code compliant electronic signature. We have looked into it. So one of the systems that it has in it currently is the ability to sign your outgoing documents. However, I know you're referring more to like a Docusign kind of a feature, and that is absolutely something we're working on with our API, so that a document can be signed by a receiver of an inspection, and then you have a record of that. So absolutely, that's where we're headed kind of next, frankly. All right.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for your presentation and your time.
Yeah. Thank you for
And
having me.
I did record this, and it looks like